Hello, folks. You are listening to the Deal by Me podcast with Dr. James W. Smith, your host, where we ask our guests to tell us your story. Your story can encourage, inspire, and hopefully transform a life. Today, I'm happy to just have with me uh, Erik Allen, uh, raised in a broken home, battled addiction, jail at 18, bankrupt at 21, only to turn everything around. 16 plus years sober, beautiful wife, two kids, podcaster, speaker, and now helping entrepreneurs get known and noticed online. What a powerful story, and I'm excited to have him with me today. As he come to share with listeners, none other than Erik Allen.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your show, man. It's truly an honor to be here. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Erik, I'm excited. As I told you earlier, I'm very excited to have you. I'm going to leave a lot of time just for you to kind of tell your story. I know listeners will be excited to hear what you have to say, it's a dream come true. And what you have gone through, I know listeners will be excited to just hear it. Let me just ask you a couple of questions though that thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, you talked about your morning routine, and you
Mhm.
kind of talked about how you grew in your faith and your business, and you kind of share with us how you came to know the Lord. And being a minister and having pastored for 32 years, I guess that's one of the first things I want to just ask you to kind of share with our listeners. How did that come about?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a church, but I was young. And so I was the kid that would go to the children's, kids ministry, and I would have my pockets full of GI Joes, and I would sneak away to the bathroom and just never go back. I don't know why they never came to find me, but I'd be, that was my initial, interest in going to church. And it wasn't until I was about 19 years old that I met a girl who was a Christian and gave my life to Christ at that time. It wasn't for me though. Looking back, I was really doing it because of her. And, I got baptized in the Columbia River out there in Washington. And, her and I, we dated for 2.5 years. And I would say for the most part, we had a very, very, clean biblical relationship. We didn't have sex or anything like that. It was just like we went to church and we had a small group. It was great. The problem was as soon as we broke up, just due to kind of separation of location, I went right back to my old ways. So it was like getting back into drugs and alcohol and all of that stuff. And it wasn't until somebody had enough courage to come up and ask me if I wanted to go to a church event out in Renton, Washington, where I was at. And I was depressed. I was addicted to drugs at the time. And the girl who was asking me this, she was good looking. And so I said, well, yeah, what time do I need to be there? And that was my initial kind of interest in that. But I think God opened the door at that moment, because once I went down to this event, and this is it on the other side of the state. So I grew up in Eastern Washington state, and out in Seattle is where this was at. And I got down to this church, and all of a sudden I knew all these guys that I had met like 4 or 5 years earlier. I was like, man, what are you doing here? Like, I met you on the other side of the state. And so it was just kind of, I think God was starting to plant the seed in that moment.
Mhm.
And about a month later was Easter 2004. And I went out and partied with this band that I was managing at the time. And I woke up Easter morning in my buddy's basement. There's like probably 15 guys all passed out. And I felt so clearly in my heart in that moment that God was going, man, you're going down a path that's going to end your life real quick. And so I decided in that moment to surrender everything. I gave my life to Christ right there. And I said, God, I'm done. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up who invited me to that church event. And I got her voicemail. I said, hey, thank you so much for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime. I was working at Starbucks. And well, a month later, we were dating, and now we've been married for almost 18 years.
Oh, beautiful,
And
beautiful.
and so I think God just brings us, that's how together. And it wasn't just like, hey, I gave my life to Christ and that all was good.
Mm-hmm.
I had to change my environment,
Oh,
right?
I
And
understand.
so, I walked away from the party scene. And I found guys in the church that had great businesses, great marriages,
Uh,
great walks with Christ. And I said,
mhm.
I want to spend as much time with you guys as I can.
Oh, okay.
And so that's what allowed me to get on the path that I'm at today.
I understand. I do understand that, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about and share with you. I do understand how this cold turkey can work
Mm-hmm.
because I did it.
Mm-hmm.
I was a compulsive gambler. Uh, not I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, but I would take a drink, with the boys and everything. But after I committed this crime, out they sent me to Dorothy Dix Mental Hospital here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And while there, I had a chance to reflect on all, because I used to practice law for 10 years. And
Wow.
I began to reflect on how did I get myself in such a mess?
Mm-hmm.
And it was right there that I just said, it's over.
Mm-hmm.
No more gambling, no more drinking. All of that stuff is over. Cold turkey.
Come on.
And people sometimes don't really understand that, but it happens. So
Yes.
I know
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
that's just good to hear. Let listeners know exactly where we are, where you're coming from as we are having this interview. Where are you located?
I'm in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, which is about 100 miles from Canada. So I'm tucked at the very top of Idaho. It's currently about probably 3.5 inches, 4 inches of snow today. So yeah,
Okay,
it's
okay.
coming down pretty good today.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I love it. I'm going to give you the chance to just kind of tell your story. I know listeners will be very excited to just hear it. So just
Mm,
kind of tell us a little bit about your background, what happened, and your story. And if it's something that I think I need to interject or ask you a
yeah,
little bit more about, I'll do that. But
sure.
I just want you to share. Listeners, you must know that not only are we talking with somebody who is very interesting, but someone who also has the Erik Allen show. So
Mm,
we're talking about somebody who has really basically done it all. So I'm going to just give him the time to just share and talk and just let you sit back and listen. Erik,
mm.
you got the floor. Tell us a
Oh,
little
thank
bit
you.
about yourself.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I grew up in Eastern Washington, a typical household, I thought. Went to Sunday school. My grandparents were very involved in the church that we went to. My parents,
Mm,
not so much. But my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old, and I didn't know anyone who had gotten a divorce. It was a new word to me. I didn't even understand really what it meant.
mm,
And then my mom almost got together with a guy who was did get together with a guy almost immediately after the divorce. And I thought that was kind of strange, but he was very physically abusive. So even from the first time that I met him, I remember him hitting my mom and shoving her around. And I thought, man, this is just so strange because my dad was not that way. And there was a moment where I'd be outside looking through their back room, their bedroom window, and he'd be hitting her with a cordless phone when those were around, and I'd call the police. My mom would never press charges. I didn't understand what's going on. And then in the middle of my 8th grade year, they decided to move me and my sister, who's 4 years younger than me, and they also had a baby together, a couple months old. And they said, we're moving to Stevensville, Montana, population 1,200 people. And they rented this house on 5 acres right by the Bitterroot River. It was a beautiful property, ponds, and behind us was another property, and then you got to the Bitterroot River.
mm,
The problem was the house they rented was 3 bedrooms, so it was one for them, one for my brother who's a couple months old, and one for my sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, Erik, you're going to live in the garage. And I literally had a plastic tarp down the garage that was the separator between my bed and the truck that would pull in. Luckily, my half of the garage had a fireplace in it, so I would be able to stay semi-warm through the middle of those negative-degree winters of Montana most nights. And the abuse got worse because we were further away from police. And I think he realized that he could put on more abuse without being stopped. And I remember a moment that changed the trajectory of my life for the next 10 years. I was about 13 years old, brushing my teeth. They came home arguing. Wasn't anything different. But the way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage door where my bedroom was at. And as I brushed my teeth, I felt God going, dude, you got to turn around. There's some serious stuff going down. And so as I peeked around the corner, I could see this man on top of my mom, one shot after that, just boom, boom, boom. I'm like, man, I got to stop this guy. So I walked up behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could and I split the back of his head open.
mm.
And it didn't knock him out. He turned around and he said, what then? As he did that, I took another swing and split his forehead open. Lots of blood. Cops finally show up, take him to jail. I'm thinking I'm the hero. I stopped this thing. And I had about 3 months left of my freshman year of high school shortly after that. And I got kicked out. So I had to go stay with my buddy. Well, I would sleep on hardwood floors, and him and I would, steal a cigarette from his dad on the way out to school in the morning, and finished my freshman year of high school there. Moved back to live with my dad, and my dad rented a house for him and I, and he would put $20 in a cup for my lunch money for the week, fill the freezer with Hungry Man meals, and basically go stay with his girlfriend. I'd see my dad a couple of times in passing, and he, bought me a public transportation, pass on the bus so I could get to school. And but I got into drugs early on at that point, so I was getting into pot and acid and mushrooms and pharmaceuticals, whatever I could get my hands on. And it caught up to me. I was 18 years old, and I got arrested for having a bong, which is interesting now because in the state of Washington, it's now legal to have a bong. But when I was a senior in high school, it was not. And so got arrested, had to go to jail for 24 hours. And I wasn't saved at this point, obviously, but I remember this one thing that I could bring into the jail. And I brought my dad's Bible. And it was the only thing that I thought would protect me from going into this jail. I was 145 pounds, black and white chain gang outfit on, and I, bright orange slippers. I go into the cell, probably 12, 13 other guys in there. And it was in that moment that I think that God started to plant some seeds, but I didn't quite listen. I got out and went right back to my old ways. But like I said, it was about a year later that I had ended up giving my life to Christ. Moved up to Seattle. I got kicked out of my dad's house 2 weeks after I graduated high school, and battled addictions, lived off credit cards. And like you said, I was 21 years old and had to file bankruptcy. I was about $30,000 in debt at that point.
Wow. Wow. What a awesome story. Uh, what, well, let me ask you this question, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I should ask it like this. What would you tell someone who wants to know how they can get out of a bad situation? Because you were really in a terrible situation. When I listen to what you just said, hitting your mom's boyfriend, splitting his head open, and at a young age, and now you're where you are. There are people who need to know. Just I know your background and accepting Christ and all this obviously helps some. I probably was the main reason, I suppose, but kind of share a little bit about that. What brought you, or what would you tell somebody who was going through something terrible in their life?
We have to realize that our past and other people's opinions of us do not define our future.
Oh, I love that.
And if we are in a bad relationship and we're around people that are negative and causing physical, emotional harm to us or those that we love, we need to get uncomfortable and find the courage to walk away from that. And I get that's easier said than done. But if you're in a situation bad enough, eventually it's going to get so bad that there's going to be some real serious issues that happen, or you're going to be able to be uncomfortable just for a bit while you walk away. And I get going into new environments or it's uncomfortable. But I think if we want to change our life, then we have to get uncomfortable. We have to be comfortable being uncomfortable if we want to make a change. I didn't know anybody going to that church. God planted those guys there. I didn't know anybody when I gave my life to Christ in that basement by myself, right? But God did. He had me on that path, right? I think when we're ready to listen and take that change or take that step and change, we have to change the environment that we're in. Go find a church. Go find a small group. Go find somebody that lives the life that you want to live. I'm a big proponent saying find guys that are living the life that you want to live, because just being in their presence is going to motivate you to be better. It's going to motivate you to be a better person, a better husband, a better father, right? I would say if you want to get out and you're hurting, you have to find that courage to walk away. And I get it. It's tough. But I know that if you rely on God, he'll give you the strength. He'll give you the courage to walk away from that stuff, because he's got a bigger plan for you than in that negative situation or bad situation that you're in.
Erik, you have just said so much that's I don't know how to really respond to what you say. It's just awesome to share with us today, and in the way in which you're doing it. I have this personal question, I guess.
Sure.
I wanna ask. You are a podcaster also,
Yes.
as I take it, and uh, I'm I feel so fortunate because I've only done, this will be my, I think, 12th episode.
Okay. Come on.
Yeah, so I feel so fortunate to be able to have you as a guest. And
Oh, it's an honor
so
to be here.
I thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
So how do you go about, being able to get these speaking engagements that you get, to be able to book certain uh, big time, and maybe that's not a good word, but guests on your show? Is there anything magic about that that you
I,
can share?
I don't know if
I,
there's magic, but it's definitely some work for sure. I still work full time, and so I found for me personally, if I wanted to grow in my personal development, I had to kind of uh, figure out a time that I could do that where I wasn't interrupting my family time. And so for me, I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week. And I get up and I work on podcasting and I edit my shows. I reach out to guests, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, why do you wake up at 4 a.m.?" And it's because my desire to be successful is bigger than my desire to sleep. And so when I look at it that way, and I'm not eating into my family time because I'm real strict on that. About 5 o'clock at night, it's time to put the phone away. It's time to go be with my family. And so I get up early, so I'm not eating into that time. But when it comes to podcasting, the way that you win is you just don't quit. You stay consistent. And I've been releasing weekly shows since 2017, and 400 plus shows, and it's always learning. I'm still learning how to like tweak things to be better. I did almost 100 episodes in a walk-in closet, and I was recording on Zoom and then uploading to YouTube and calling it my podcast. And somebody said, well, how can I listen to it on Apple? And I was like, what is Apple? I don't even know what that is. So it's like all this learning thing. But once I realized that there's a whole nother audience out there that could be impacted by my story and the guests that I bring on, I was like, all right, then we're going to go on to Apple. And so here we are, ranked in the top 2.5% globally of all podcasts now, which is great. And but for me, it's just about connecting with people that
okay.
have stories. I'm fascinated with people's stories.
Well,
And if you,
and that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
yeah,
You've really helped me to really see this. Just with my only 12th episode, but I'm excited. The fact
yeah,
when you said that you will be happy to be one of my guests, I said, "Oh my God!" It was just like great.
yeah.
So I'm just I'm thrilled. Uh, I what would what is your definition? How would you define success? If somebody
Mm,
ask you that question, I know that's one of the things that you have that maybe people can ask you, and you're able to kind of respond. Could you
yeah,
just share with that? Maybe listeners would like to know, you know, what is your
yeah,
definition of success? Because different people have different uh, definitions of success. Some
yep.
people may think it's all about money. Some people, something else, job wise. What is it in your opinion?
For
How would
me,
you
it,
define success?
yeah, for me, it's breaking the chains of divorce, abuse, rejection, and addiction so that my kids don't ever
Oh,
have to experience what I went through.
okay.
I want to change the legacy of the Allen tribe moving forward. I
Oh,
feel like the generation of my parents, my wife's parents, they've been married and divorced 4 or 5 times each, right? But our grandparents were solid. They were married for 50 plus years and amazing. And my grandma, who's 88 years old, has been praying for me since before I was born. And she's such a prayer warrior. And I truly believe that I'm here today because of her prayers, right? But it's that generation of our grandparents that were amazing. And so I want that back. I want to be that generation for my kids and great grandkids. And so for success for me is to break that chain and not have my kids witness or experience the childhood that I had or my wife had. And hopefully, they my kids are 12 and 9. They've both loved the Lord and they gave their life to the Lord early on. And I get that they'll go through trials in their teens and things like that, and they'll go through experiences. But right now, they have such a joy and a love and a happiness for the Lord and just serving others. And for me, that's success.
well, this podcast is about encouraging, it's about inspiring, about transforming. And certainly, you add a lot to that with all that you share with us today. As a minister and one who's retiring at the end of this year, and it's the real reason I wanted to begin and start a podcast because I wanted to continue my ministry, even though I was retiring from the pastorate. I wanted to do something that I thought would be of help to somebody else.
Mm.
And so I wanted to kind of title my podcast, Tell Us Your Story. And as a result of that, it was my hope that guests could kind of share from their experiences, the events in their lives that could benefit someone else. Okay.
Mm.
And that's what I see you doing. And I just want to ask, is there anything else that you would share with listeners from your experiences and events in your life that you think would be a benefit to them, helpful to them?
Yeah, for me, I'm big on community. So, I go to a men's Bible study every Thursday morning with a bunch of
Okay.
guys that, we started in October of last year. There were 6 of us. Now there's 22 guys that show up every week.
Okay.
You know, I also just finished up a year-long mentorship with 6 other men from my church that we met every 6 weeks. And, I co-founded a company called Operation Life. And operationlife.com is about finding those men that are going through trials, and we help them get to triumph, and we help them get through those feeling lost and confused. And so it's this community of men that we've created where we have weekly calls and we talk about our struggles, we talk about our wins, business, life, marriage, Christ walks, everything. We bring that together as a community of men, and we lift each other up. And we're actually going to do a free event December 14th and 15th with a lot of speakers. It's going to be free. You do have to register at riseglobalconference.com, but you do have to register. It's free, but we're bringing in 6 speakers, and we're bringing in Jim the Rookie Morris. The movie The Rookie is based off of him. Amazing man of God. My buddy, who's a amazing man of God, Kelly Cardenas, and then another pastor friend of mine, Ira Davis, out of California. And that's just day one. And day two is going to have 3 more speakers. So we're offering this to men and say, man, let's come together, men. We need each other. Let's go lift each other up. And so that's what we're doing. And so that's what else I'm doing on top of my, podcast and my show and my
Oh,
regular job is my wife told me the other day, I didn't really think about it. She goes, Erik, that's your ministry. You're being able to minister to men in this. And I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. And so that's another passion of mine, is just bringing men together and say, man, we need each other. We need to lift each other up, especially in these times that we're living in today.
beautiful, beautiful. Well, um, another thing that I would want to ask you, and that is, I noticed that you have read, you talk about books that you've read. Is there any particular book that you would share that you think would be of interest to listeners to help them in their, you know, life or their
Mm,
journey? Just
yeah.
curious.
I read a book by Kingdom Men Rising by Tony Evans, is an amazing book.
Yeah.
Another book that I read this year for the second time is In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day by Mark
Hmm.
Batterson.
Okay.
And both of those books really, really impacted my life. As I was reading through them,
Okay.
I'm a highlighter. So I get books and I start highlighting. I feel like both of those books, almost every page is massively highlighted because there's just so much good stuff in those books. And they talk about slightly different things, but I think the concept is us men stepping up to be men in our family and in our faith, and being able to share our story comfortably and making an impact. And man, those 2 books I would say have really changed the trajectory of my life just reading them this year.
Oh, beautiful. Have you written any books yourself? Have you written a book yourself?
Great question. I signed a publishing deal earlier this year.
Okay.
So I'm actually writing the book right now. I've never really considered myself a writer, but the goal is to have the first draft done by the end of this year.
Okay.
And hopefully in Q1 of next year, we'll have this out. But I think I've written close to 12,000 words so far of it. So yeah, the book is signed, and then or the publishing deal is done. And so yeah, excited to release that book, and I'll be sharing my
Wow.
story and talk about purpose. I'm a
Okay.
big fan. I think the way that we find our purpose is we have to figure out what our passion is, and we just go all in on that, right? And there's going to be things where we can be passionate about, but it's not necessarily our purpose. But in that, while we're testing the waters out and finding things, we're going to get energized by that. And I think that's where we find our purpose. And so that's my book's going to be about my story and finding your purpose and sharing your story with the world.
I like that. Um, I've written two books myself.
Nice.
One, Deal by Me, A Golden Opportunity Blown, which is my life story, about what I just told you about,
Yeah.
practicing law, becoming a compulsive gambler, robbing a bank, serving time in prison, and pastoring for almost 32 years.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
that's and then I wrote another one, which is a second edition of that. To kind of just follow up on, where I am now. So it's exciting to just get into it, so I know exactly how you feel. It takes a little time, but you get with it, work with it, and feel good about it,
Yep.
and you get it done. Is there anything you would like for me to share as with my with the listeners who are uh, listeners of this particular podcast that you haven't shared with us?
I would just say, I love connecting with people, and
Okay.
I'm on Instagram. So if people want to follow me there, it's just Erik G. Allen, or erikallenmedia.com is the website. My podcast comes out every Friday, and I have men and women on the show. Sometimes they're men and women of faith, sometimes not. But for the most part, they're very clean shows. Um, but I'm intrigued by people's stories of, their failure, and their comeback is what excites me. And so, yeah, just check me out, erikallenmedia.com, or on Instagram, it's Erik G. Allen, and Erik Allen Media on YouTube as well.
Okay.
And man, I think that God's doing some awesome stuff with your show, man. I've been a guest on over 150 podcasts over the last 2 years, man. And I'll tell you, man, this was a great conversation, and God's got some awesome stuff in play right now for you, man. I
Oh,
appreciate you
well, I
having me on.
appreciate it. Well, thank you so very much. And there you have it. Erik Allen, also the host of the Erik Allen Show. We asked if you will just check him out. I think you will truly enjoy him. If you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to go to my website, www.dealbyme.com, and check my books out. Deal by Me, A Golden Opportunity Blown. Deal by Me, a self-evaluation. And I know you will be encouraged, inspired, and hopefully transformed. And until next time, peace and blessings to each of you.